Well, welcome back to the Build Different podcast. I have been looking forward to this conversation for a very long time. One, because I think when we first started doing this, they're like, who do you think we should bring into these conversations? I'm like, well, I'm going to go find all my friends. So I'm just going to go find people that I want to go share with the world. So today we are local in Dallas-Fort Worth, up in McKinney, Texas, right outside of TPC. What is it called? TPC?
Craig Ranch.
Craig Ranch,
Yeah.
If you're a big golf fan, right outside of that golf course, up at Moss. This is really fun. I'm excited for you guys to get to meet Mr. Josh Carson, Mr. Mike Kuzenski, and Adam. Welcome in for your first episode, my man.
Yes, sir. Happy to be here.
It's going to be fun. We're going to have a good time. This whole season, we're talking about just what it looks like to implement technology and innovation from a field perspective. And so no better person than Mike to bring you in here. And Josh, you've had your way around a few times.
I'm a washed-up project manager. That's all.
I don't know about that. But this is going to be a really good time. Mike, I'm actually going to start with you. A little bit about your background, kind of what you do here at Moss. And then we're gonna get into some heavy hitters, talk about what it means, what tech means to you, and we'll just dive right into it. How's that sound?
Yeah, perfect. So I'm not a native Texan. I've made 3, but I'm not a native Texan. Married my wife, who is from Dallas area. Prior to that, I got out of high school, joined the Marines. I was a recon Marine. Got out of the Marines, went to college. Went into the medical field, didn't really know what I wanted to do. When I finished college, started a construction business and fell into that path. We moved to Texas in 97, and I started building houses, and then I got into commercial construction and worked for Beck for a long time as a superintendent. Got promoted to general superintendent in 2013, and then I left Beck in 2017. And had a little hiatus where I did some crane stuff, and then I came to Moss, and I've been with Moss for over 5 years.
That's the shortest intro I've ever heard.
Oh, really?
That was great.
He's leaving a lot out.
Oh, yeah, I mean, all the prison and stuff.
There's some good stories nestled in there. That's great, Mike. No pressure, Josh. I think my stopwatch said like minute 10. So no, it's good. And you're from Michigan.
From Michigan, yeah. Yeah, grew up in Michigan. Just couldn't, I loved it. I loved it as a kid. It's a great place to grow up. But I got so tired of the snow and driving in the snow. I wanted no part of it once I was able to leave. So family still lives there.
Did college take you out of Michigan?
No, I joined the Marines, went to California.
That's right.
Then
Okay.
I traveled all over the world. But then when I got out of the Marines, I went back to Michigan and went to school.
And then the snow came.
And snow came, and I remembered why I didn't like Michigan, and I left. So
Where'd you go in school in Michigan?
Ferris State University.
Okay.
So
What'd you study?
D2, nuclear medicine.
Okay.
So ties into construction very well.
Yeah,
So.
basically the same thing.
Same
Perfect for a superintendent.
Sister industry.
Just in case you have any medical emergencies,
Yeah,
Mike
no,
is there for.
Yeah, no.
Safety's number one on Mike's jobs.
I'm not that guy for medical emergencies, but yeah.
Mike's definitely underselling himself. He's a I would say young at heart, huge innovator, great friend, of course, but he's awesome to have on our team, and it's fun to do work with him, as you can tell, every single day.
I mean, when I put out the invite to Mike, I said, hey, we do this little podcast thing. What do you think? I don't know that I've had anyone more excited than you to probably be on here.
Dude, I mean, it wasn't even just the podcast. We haven't seen each other forever, man. And out of all of the project engineers that I've ever worked with, I hold everybody to great
Whoa
standard.
now.
Oh,
No,
now.
seriously.
All right.
Whoa.
Seriously, you and I had our battles up front.
This show is about you, Mike. I mean,
No, we had our battles up front, but we learned to give and take, and you and I ended up being a great team.
Yeah.
And so I judge all my PEs based on how Grant would do it.
that bar's pretty low.
WWGD.
What's crazy, man, we could be on here for a long time. I feel like the conversations that we have before we hit record are almost more fun than the ones that we do hit record, but that's okay. We'll get some good stuff in here too. So, but Mike and I did have a chance to work together, gosh, out of college, which you want to talk about rowdy cowboy moving to Texas here. And anyway, there's some good stories we'll share. So
He's grown up, but you're exactly the same. Just have a kid.
I've grown up a little bit. Love it. Josh, give us a little rundown.
Well, I'll try to follow that, but Josh Carson, Vice President here at Moss. I'm a native Oklahoman, so similar to Mike, I did not grow up in Texas, but what's the saying? I got here as fast as I could. my whole career's been in Dallas, but have a beautiful wife, Lindsay, 3 awesome kiddos, Addison, Luke, and Kennedy. Live up in Prosper, Texas. And my role here mostly focused on business development and operations is kind of my core. Kind of ventured my way through a couple great companies. So started at Beck with these guys. Got to work on a similar project and watch this relationship happen from afar. I was actually working on a different one in the same trailer, which was even funnier to watch. But so spent my first bit at Beck, and then about 5 years at J.E. Dunn. Great company as well, very different in a lot of good ways. And then made my way over here almost 6 years ago, and have been helping build our group since.
It's crazy. When I was thinking about it driving up here today, I'm like, how long have I known you guys? I mean, I've known you, Josh, for 2008. So that'd be, if I do quick math here, that's like 20-some plus years.
One of us is an engineer. Remember that?
I think you were the one. I'll never forget this. You were the one that picked me up from the airport when I first moved here, and I was like, dude, what am I doing here? Texas. I did not grow up in Texas, but I'll never forget that. And then I remember the first time I met you, walking into the job site trailer, of like, oh man, this isn't an internship anymore. Yeah. This is the real world.
You made the big leagues.
I've jumped in the fire.
I don't know if Mike knew that. We interned it back together.
I did not know that.
I was a little older when I went back, and he was a little younger. And
that was crazy. Yeah, man, too many good stories. This kind of seems like a softball question to ask you, but so this whole why we do this podcast, who listens, all that kind of stuff. The hope is that we want to introduce more people to either tips, tools, stories, stuff all around kind of technology and innovation. And when I was thinking about, all right, who do we want to have on for this season? Obviously, you guys have really motivated and encouraged me in a lot of ways, in different ways, for how do you do things different. I think a big thing that we try to push, at least on this show, is like, hey, innovation isn't just technology. You can't just like dump a technology on a project and be like, oh, they're innovative, crushing it out there. Obviously, it's a lot of people, it's a lot of process, it's a lot of iterations and doing things different. But the first question I want to ask you guys is what is your relationship with innovation and technology? Like, when you think about your careers, all the things that you guys have seen and gone through and kind of had as a part of what got you to here, like how would you describe your relationship with innovation and or technology, whichever way you'd want to take that?
So for me, I see my relationship with technology a lot different than Josh's. My relationship with technology is, I know that I'm not the guy that's going to bring all of the technology and knowledge to the table, but I think it's very important for the team to accept technology. And I'm probably a more forward thinker than most superintendents. I grasp it and I feel like, let's try it. Like I'm adventurous. I'll try these things. We joked a little bit earlier, like back in the early days, Grant was the one trying to talk me into not using paper plans anymore, and I thought that was like the devil speak. Like, but it worked out, and now I've lived my life that way. But technology for me is something it's necessary. I'm excited about it, but I know that I'm not the guy that's bringing it to the table, so I encourage the team to use it.
How do you think that's like changed the way that you look at it? Like, do you feel like you've kind of taken a step of saying like, hey, I may not be the one that goes and like finds something to think about, or do you kind of like accept that, hey, like I'm not going to be the one that finds it, but I'm certainly not going to be the one that stifles it and like snuffs it out?
For sure. So coming from the superintendent side, you used to have to be the toughest guy on the job to be the general superintendent. You were hard-nosed. You didn't accept any technology, back in the day. I came up under a guy, my mentor was a guy who was very much like that, didn't accept any technology. And so I had to kind of learn through you that it wasn't such a bad thing. So, and I've hopefully led my teams down that path now.
I would say in general, Mike's a let's try anything guy. His favorite saying is improvise, adapt, and overcome. And I think that applies to technology. I think it applies to problems in the field as a superintendent. I think it applies to problems in the office. I think Mike's always been a huge supporter. We live in the early adapter. Let's try I'll try anything, and I don't get discouraged if it breaks. that's great, but you can't have a room full of people like me. Otherwise, you get nothing done, and you never figure out what works or doesn't. You have to have a wingman that's willing to stand up in front of a group as a leader and say, "Hey guys, let's go try it. Let's figure it out." Yesterday, we were in a kickoff meeting, and it was pretty awesome. We were talking about, you talk about the evolution of technology, and we said, do we want to do this in Bluebeam, or do we want to put it all in Procore? And Mike was the first one in the room that said, let's just put it all in Procore, which is funny to go back 10 years to your comment. You were pushing everybody into Bluebeam 10 years ago to get them out of paper. So it's a pretty fascinating journey.
Yeah.
Go for it, Adam.
What was that mentality that stopped a lot of the older generation from being interested or adapting or wanting to have any new tools or kind of new ways on their job? Like your mentor's mentality.
I think this goes back to, kind of a generational thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, our fathers were very set in their ways in certain things. And I think a lot of the superintendents that came up before me were very much like that. And they, I think what also happened is technology got so much better from 2008 and on. Before that, the technology things that were introduced, not all of them panned out. So they were naysayers to the stuff that was being presented to them. So I think once the first few hit and it didn't really help out a whole bunch,
sure,
maybe they just said, hey, this isn't the right way. Let's just keep doing the same way we're doing it,
Maybe a follow-up to that too, maybe pre-grant, right? PG in your life.
Yeah.
Did you have any technology kind of failures, anything that was tried to implement that just didn't live up to the hype? Or
so for me, it was always scheduling.
Okay.
So the scheduling tools that we had were not very user-friendly. Like, you'd work on the schedule for an hour and a half, and if you didn't save that version every 30 minutes, you risked your computer locking up and losing everything you did. So I can't tell you how many times I lost a schedule because I didn't save it every hour or whatever.
Right.
So for me, those are the things that really would just drive me nuts. So
yeah.
I think that's the first thing I remember when I walked in your office. You had this folder of 1 million copies of the same thing. And I'm like, Mike, the reason your computer is so slow is you got 7,000 copies
right.
of.
I distinctly remember, my screen was 1,000 different icons of schedules that we had saved. Grant fixed me up real quick.
I don't think you're the only superintendent who has a screen that looks like that.
Well, I don't anymore. Grant, he taught me what.
Okay, good.
Mike doesn't use schedules anymore. He just wings it.
Man. It's interesting to hear you say that though too. Of I don't think oftentimes I'm gonna categorize this here my generation coming in 2008 or whenever it was. We don't really know and understand some of the baggage is for sure not the right word. I would just say predecessors of what your experience with technology was. I mean, I'm coming out of college. I'm like, dude, the world's my oyster, man. Let's go absolutely crush this thing. And hello, brick wall. First job.
But that's a great thing. Because if you did have that, you might have been more hesitant to try to present those things to the guy that this is my smile, right? So, I mean, sometimes superintendents are intimidating, but you didn't have any of that reservation. You came out and you were like, hey, guys, this can help you.
Yeah.
I think the best part, too, is watching, and I was guilty of this. Grant was absolutely guilty of this. Many, particularly young people coming into it, you have all these, you're like the eager beaver. You have all these ideas and great solutions, and you're trying to push them super fast. And I remember many a days, what's called borderline Grant, ready to jump off a bridge. You were sitting in his cubicle crying because his ideas weren't getting any traction.
Crying.
There were tears. And you can't edit that. But you learned a valuable lesson on getting people on the team to buy into an idea as opposed to the solution. And I think that's that evolution of SMU in particular that I think that you kind of went through, that we all kind of went through. It was like you got to get everybody on board first before you go push it out.
I don't know. There certainly wasn't a moment, but there was certainly a retrospect of this recognition that hey, technology is 10% the process, or sorry, 10% the actual tool. I remember I would get so excited. I mean, you probably remember so excited about, oh my gosh, I learned something. I watched this video this weekend. This is amazing.
Oh, yeah.
We got do this.
He'd come in every Monday and be like, hey, we got a new thing.
And how much, not necessarily as much you, but maybe Chris or project manager side of being dude, we're not going to go to the next thing until we actually figure out if this is the thing that you brought up 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
But what's the, maybe for you guys too, what's the risk in that, right? I mean, it's a sort of rhetorical question, but, hopping from solution to solution, innovation to innovation throughout the life of a project, what does that do to a team? What's that do to the project over the lifespan?
I mean, I saw you get exhausted. It was like, dude, come on, man. Like, we didn't even figure out. That was my perspective of it. But
Well, again, we're talking about one specific project, but that was a time of like the innovation awakening for me. Like, I had a lot of different things coming at me that we'd never talked about or learned about or done before. So I think probably I had some fatigue with some of that, but I had Captain Energy here next to me, feeding me what I really needed to be fed.
Mm-hmm.
There were some things that didn't pan out, but because of those things, we found the next iteration of it, and they worked.
You got to try to know whether it's going to work or not.
Yeah.
Well, at the balance of it all, too, at the end of the day on that job, we're trying to deliver 1,200 beds and $120 million worth of work. Like, all this other stuff is great, but we're in the middle of trying to build an airplane in the air, and
Mm-hmm.
it's like, man, little incremental steps are cool. You can make pivots, but flipping the whole script and taking, I don't know, you did math, $60,000 worth of drawings or whatever we were printing every week or every month on iterations, and now you're trying to push everybody into Bluebeam, and some folks haven't ever even opened Bluebeam.
Yeah.
We were pushing the limits on how many licenses could we even buy.
Yeah.
So there was a financial side to that, but there was also just we got to work. Like, we got to build. We're here to build buildings, not play on computers.
how many times did you tell me that, Mike? Like, what are you actually doing over there?
7 million times probably.
Yeah.
At one point, I remember
You are checking submittals, right?
At one point, I remember we were so on that project, we had a unique situation where our office was an old Bank of America building or Chase Bank.
Yeah. Cool.
And my office was like straight down the hall from Grant's.
It was the corner office banker.
I remember
man.
one time I had a laser pointer and I put a mirror up so I could just shine my laser pointer because we didn't have the intercom, so I would just call Grant. What are you working on, Grant? Quit thinking of things and let's just perfect the thing we've got.
Why do you think that job? I mean, we were talking about it before we started recording, but like, if you were to take the recipe of that job and say like, hey, this isn't a like copy paste. If you do these 5 things, you're gonna have success. But like, what would you say were the like core ingredients that made that job success from a technology standpoint, or just, I hate to even say technology, from an innovative standpoint? Because I think there were a lot of things that changed at that company as a result of that job, especially towards the end when people were like, hey, what are you guys doing? What's the things that are like coming on that you could like tell us? But I mean, you got to see it too. Like, what would you guys say were the like, all right, if you toss these 5 things in for the whatever, like that will make for a more innovative approach than maybe your last job?
Well, firstly, you have to have a team of the right people. And so we had folks that were, further on in their career, and we had a lot of new folks. We had probably on that project, we probably had more younger, inexperienced folks than most projects that size would have.
Mm-hmm.
That helped. At the time, we didn't know that it helped, but it helped. So we had more people willing to accept and bring technology to the table. And then also we had some folks that were really excited about being part of that change. Like even the guy we talked about, my mentor, who was a hard ass, and he really wasn't open to a whole lot. Once he saw the cool things that were happening, he allowed me to feel that it was okay to do that. I had at that point, my boss would always tell me, hey, I don't want you to be him. I want you to be you. I like you as you. But I thought I had to be him to be the general superintendent. Mm-hmm. Once I realized that and I saw that these people were open to all these other technologies, I think that's a huge plus. Also, we had some pretty big hiccups on that project. We solved some of those hiccups with the technology that some of you younger guys brought in. Like we had the dowel board problems, and we were having, we put this foam board skin on these buildings, and then we would find leaks on the wall, and we could never figure out where they were coming from. Turns out they were coming from like 40 feet laterally. And the way we found that out was we used a thermal gun. Mm-hmm. Just little things like that. We were always looking for a way to help innovate and solve problems. So problem solving, right age and mentality of the group. I think those are probably 2 of the biggest things.
What do you think, Josh? Anything?
Well, I would let me spin it to the Moss version of that, because I think there are a ton of parallels that Mike just said. We have a project that we're on phase 2 of. Irby, you've been out there. Irby 1 and Irby 2 is doing great, but Irby 1 was our first big tower in Dallas. It was our plant the flag. And to Mike's point, everybody gets some energy around that, right? Like, oh, we are here. We're all Dallas people starting an office, and we're playing in big boy land. Or as Mike Maz likes to call it, varsity. We're a varsity player, right? Well, to Mike's point, that team we have a very seasoned general superintendent that kind of is open, similar to probably what Mike was describing, and then a whole bunch of young, it's a very young staff. I would say very applicable to the SMU situation. When you were just describing it, it's like that's Irby to a T for us. And that team tried more, failed at more, pivoted, did it again, did it different. And we saw little incremental benefits from different technologies like Procore. We were the first project in Moss to use Procore. And ultimately now we use it enterprise-wide because of what that team just stuck with and just kind of get through it. And I think that's one thing, maybe one of the other things that you were alluding to is you have to have some tenacity, you have to have some grit, and you have to have some buy-in to just try it and stick with it, and then let's call it a fail or not.
Push through.
And I think that team, I think Irby, I think the teams that you see do them very different have that just like almost failure is not an option mentality until it is an option. But
right. Well, I want to go back to something you'd said about your mentor and kind of the mentality, or maybe the project manager you're referencing that encouraged you to be you and not be, don't emulate perfectly to your mentor. I think that's a very important concept in today's industry with as many young people that are coming in, as many of the old guard that are retiring. I've seen personally a lot of young people come in and try and be their mentor, and there's a lot of good that comes in there. I mean, we still need good builders, right? That's something that I'm a little interested to see how that unfolds the next handful of years. But there's also that those bad habits of this is the way we do it, this is the way we've always done it, this is the way we're going to continue to do it. Maybe just touch on that a little bit more. Maybe just advice to some of the younger superintendents that are coming up, the folks in the field who need to figure out how to navigate the industry.
Yeah. So my mom told me 2 things in life that I always hold tight. 1, you'll never make as much as you're worth. You only make as much as you can negotiate. So I put that one aside. And then my mom told me there's always good parts of everybody. So everybody that I work with, whether I do not get along with them at all or I think they're mostly wrong, there's a good trait that I can pull out of that person and use in my life. And I try to emulate a lot of things. Like I learned so much from this young man. Like I've learned a ton from this guy. You need to be able to pull things from people and use them, but not be like them.
Yeah.
Like everybody has their own pluses and minuses, but don't change who you are. Be who you are, but use the positives from everybody else that you see in your own way.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I think
I'm
one
a
thing.
little disappointed you didn't call me a young man.
Well, I
Take that
did
personal.
not say that.
Carry on.
To the because I think where our relationship turned a corner a little bit was because I agree. I think there was definitely this was me just maturing maybe. There was definitely a recognition that I remember you having with me being like, oh, hey, maybe he's not just blowing steam. Like maybe he does have some ideas that we could actually use here. And I remember the thought I had was like, hey, Mike's going to help me be more successful at this than it just being some kind of like smoke and mirrors thing that we do here, we don't do somewhere else. But like talk a little bit about how almost the intangible side of that like mentor relation, like in the sense that, hey, how do you almost extract those good things while also being transparent and honest with them of like, hey, here's your blind spots too, by the way. Like, hey, I see because I remember very specifically you and I'd sit in that office and you'd be like, hey, here's where you're being blind here. And if I'm being honest, like that was like the first person that ever would like be like, hey, this is a blind spot for you. I hear what you're saying. I know what you're doing, but you got to remember this. Like you got to think about, because my blind spot was like just thinking, hey, why is this project manager not like, why is he not getting it?
Yeah.
And you would be like, hey, you're not thinking about like, so talk about almost how that side of being honest and open and transparent and like vulnerable with maybe your mentor or mentees also plays a big part of it too.
So I feel like I'm on the very open end of being vulnerable. When it comes to being a superintendent, that's typically not something you have as a trait. I feel like I leave myself open for, criticism. I leave myself open for, fierce conversations with people. That was one of the things that you and I had to break through. Like, I distinctly remember to this day, one of the most important conversations we ever had was a very heated conversation about you counting the rebar. I don't know if you remember that.
I remember it. I remember a lot of conversations.
That was a very fierce conversation. So we would get shipments of rebar, and they would have bar tags on them. And Grant, at that point, didn't think that it was his job to do that. And so we had it out.
This is an exposing episode.
Well,
typical new engineer, though.
So it's really not even about that. That taught me that I was able to get through to a young man who sees things totally different than me. And I think that also taught you that you and I were able to argue and still work through it. Because at that point, I think you were so young in the business that I think you thought that would be like a...
It was under me.
Yeah.
Very much so. Yeah.
So anyway, I think it was a great lesson for both of us. We broke through something there. And I think to speak to what happened is you have to just be able to break through any kind of force fields each other have up. Like, if you're part of a team, then you got to be able to have fierce conversations. And I think that, for me, is a big part of how you lead a team and how you be a good teammate. I learned most of my leadership stuff I learned in sports. Being a teammate, baseball, football, hockey, whatever it is. You have your role, you have to do it, but you also have to try to be the best at bringing everybody together when it's time. And I think a big part of being on a team is being able to have fierce conversations.
I'm glad the team comment came up because, again, for those that didn't get the pleasure of the pre-recording version of the conversation of the catch-up, which I'm sure if anybody listening has been on a project team, has worked for a construction company for a long time, you've had those conversations. I've had those with my old Turner teams. What is it about a job site team, right? The core, the nucleus of the construction project that is running the job, reviewing submittals, counting rebar, right? There's a task and a role for everyone there. What makes that team function highly, right? Have you found a secret sauce over the course of your career?
I feel like I do. So I was a recon Marine, so I operated in a 6-man team. You had to know exactly what this guy was thinking, exactly what this guy was thinking, and exactly what the capabilities of each teammate are. Mm-hmm. Even if your role is X, if I know that you can't fully do X without some help from Grant, then you have to be able to understand that and play that. Like, for me, I think the most important thing for being a fluid and productive team is to be able to know each other well and understand each other's limits and be able to communicate somehow effectively. Like fierce conversations or love or whatever it is, you have to bond somehow to get to the finish line.
Mm-hmm. That's great.
I think something, Josh, I'm going to almost kick it to you because I remember seeing this when you and I interned together and just, I don't know, as I kind of got to know you too. You know, we had those moments at that job that we were just kind of forged by fun. Like, we'd be there on a Saturday, we're cooking burgers, and the grill catches on fire. But I think something that you've done well, and almost like led by example, is like, hey, like, yes, we're here to build a job. We're here to obviously get a job done at the end of the day and leave this for the client. But like, hey, like, if we're not having fun along the way, like, we're definitely missing it. Like, how have you seen that kind of help with team building too? Because if you're always just coming to the job 6 a.m., leaving at 7, like, you're going to get burnt out, you know? And I don't know. I think we naturally had it because of that job, just had so many random characteristics. But, like, how have you seen the dynamics of being outside of the job site trailer, outside of the job office or office like this, help build the teams in a way that you're like, okay, now when you hit the ground running at 6 a.m., you guys are in a clearly different mental state and relational state with each other.
Yeah. Let's dive a couple of things I'm thinking. So one, this is a people business. We just happen to build buildings. That's our byproduct, but we're in the business of relationships, right? And if whether that's on your job site team or with your client or whatever, it's all a function of how deep are those relationships, how genuine are those relationships. So I would tell you every successful team I've been a part of had a lot of fun together. Because really, whenever you get outside the office, you have fun, you light the grill on fire, whatever you do, there's laughter, it creates vulnerability, it creates a moment of like, hey, we're all the same people at the end of the day, and we're all on the same team. Our sign all says Moss or whatever company. And I think that's what bridges those generational differences of young and old or innovative or not or whatever. Like, we're just dudes and ladies doing construction. So I think that core of just remember the value of those relationships. That's one of our values here, and I think there's probably two that really resonate, but one of them is honoring relationships, and at the end of the day, that's really, really important. Second is contagious energy. Work hard, be nice, have fun. Pretty straightforward advice if you want a high-performing team. If you do those things together. So for me, on my come up, the coolest thing is hopefully being a little bit inspiring or enabling when you're in a position of authority, making sure that those around you and below you proverbially understand that you support that, you want that, there's money for that, there's time for that, there's a focus on that. I think it's a really, really important role that I play, and then it's really rewarding for me to sit back and see the teams go out and do that. You know, the guys at Hockaday, the team project that Mike just finished, I think they emulated it really well, and all of them really contribute here. But you know, you get these stories or these text messages where they went and they bought this like giant-sized teddy bear, and they gave it to the team, the soccer team or lacrosse team that was playing for their first event. And like, I had nothing to do with that. Like, they knew fully, like, it was a couple $100, whatever. We could care less. But they did that. I get a text from the client, like, your team's amazing. And I'm like, it is. They are amazing. They had nothing to do with Josh. That was Mike and JP doing what they and Tommy doing what they do best. And that's really, really rewarding. That's inspiring to me, because that's a good reminder too. Like, hey, that job was very successful. Let's go do that again.
Those are the jobs that are fun.
Oh,
those are the
so
jobs
fun.
that, you're going to be in the fire on certain days. You're going to have those fierce conversations. There's going to be stressful moments. There's going to be long hours. But at the end of the day, we're enjoying what we're doing here, and it's all worth it, right? It's all worth it.
I mean, it's the old anecdote: work hard, play hard.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
But I think what's fascinating, even hearing you say that, though, is like, if you would have told me that 10 years ago, 15, however many years it's been, I'd have been like, nah, man, this sucks.
Yeah.
we are like in the thick of it.
Yep.
This, but like, it's hard though, because you're in it, and you don't appreciate, because like what you said, it's like, hey, like, those are the fun jobs. Every job can be fun.
Yes.
But at least I don't hear this often, but I don't get the sense that every job believes that.
When you're in the middle of it, it's hard to sometimes see the fun. When you're in the thick of it, right? You know, I've been on projects with, you know, you guys have a cool shuffleboard table out here in the middle of the, right? We've had a ping pong table, foosball table. You know, there's some element. We talked about it yesterday, actually. Yeah. We went to a job site yesterday. I noticed, first thing I noticed, you walk in the job site, there's the air hockey table, there's the little ring swing game deal that's big down here. Yeah. But yeah, when you're in the middle of it, it's like those little things are what get you out of the norm and blow off some steam. We had little mini drones on one of my projects. We were flying around in this big open office space, and you know, it's that kind of stuff.
I mean, we'd get to the project, we'd kick on some music.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
That's good.
And then, you know, there's all kinds of different things you do to entertain, but like something we started back then, I still do. At lunchtime, we'll sit at the table and eat, and I'll put on like fail videos.
Nice. Yeah.
Like, I still watch some of the videos that we watch.
That's awesome.
Like, you know, nothing breaks the ice better than some humor.
Get some laughter going. Yeah.
Putting yourself in check, like, hey, this isn't really so bad.
I would say, too, and interested in your thought on my very first project was the hardest project that I was part of, not just because of my lack of experience, but because it was a very difficult job. We had a challenging owner. We had a schedule that wasn't the right schedule. Subcontractors that weren't doing as great as we'd hoped. But I've told many people since that project that I would go back and do that project exactly the same way. Right? I wouldn't change a damn thing, because I learned how to not build buildings as effectively as we could on that project. I'm curious if you have any of those types of jobs that you learned the most on because they didn't go as you planned.
100%. I mean, all of my projects, I learned what not to do and what to do. That particular project, I learned what not to do from several different aspects. We had some challenges in the field where we might have not made the best decision. I think we had a field leadership issue that we had to kind of navigate through. But I think overall we all know that every project you're on, you're going to learn some things. You're going to learn what is good and what's bad. It's how you use that information.
Yeah. We've talked a lot about teams and people and stuff, and not a whole lot about tech, and just kind of bring one little bit back. And I think that a trap that a lot of software tech companies fall into is that we see our products, the ROI, if you will, is that you get to go home earlier as a superintendent today, right? We're saving you hours on your job site. Can you speak to the reality of that? And have you found any, over the course of your career, innovations, technologies that truly let you go home earlier than you would have otherwise? Or is that sort of a pipe dream? And yeah, maybe just along those lines.
I don't think I've ever gone home earlier because of technology, because I'll just find something else to fill my time with. But it allows me to fill my time with other important things, for sure. One of the big things that came to me was making those checklists and having QR codes on we'd set up a QR code on every room, and you could walk up, take a picture of the QR code, and it would pop up a list. That was a game changer for me. Like, I had no idea that was ever going to be possible, and it really helped. It really helped the flow of us finishing that job, and probably without that, we would have been in a pretty tough situation to finish on time.
So you have found a lot of efficiency gains in those sorts of things.
100%
Cool.
efficiency gains with drones, being able to inspect areas of the building that you normally wouldn't be able to inspect.
I've almost heard it said, like, because I've heard, and there's a lot of buzzy stuff out there, like, oh, save hours on your job. Last season, we talked with a few folks on some executive teams of like, hey, we invest in technology purely out of like quality of life. Like that's our driver, like from hearing from our teams of why they want to use this. And we on the software side maybe hear that like, dang it, how do you quantify that? Yeah. But it is kind of unquantifiable, and it's not surprising to hear like, hey, I don't go home earlier, but think about like when you're at home, you can be more home. Yep. That to me is like quality of life. And of course that's hard to put like a metric on. How do you what do you
the challenge is, as we've innovated technology, these little devices go with us.
Right.
So it's kind of a catch-22 of, you're right, it may help you, but I just laughed because I felt like go back to the COVID life that still hung over Teams and Zoom and all those platforms, and now we have more collaborative technology allowing us to share information all the time. Even something as simple as text messages are so advanced with all the little add-ins and plugs that you can send stuff. I think there's a blessing and a curse there. It's hard to, we take our little phone with us everywhere we go, right? And, it's just one of those that.
I think the blessing there, though, and then you may not believe me when I say this, like, I had to put limits on my phone. Like, my phone turns off, or like I will go put my phone in another room. And because I've thought about that too. It's like, oh man, we've just like gone way too far down the rabbit hole. We're too far past it. But it almost now pushes the burden back on like us to manage it rather than it managing us. Like that is tricky in itself, where it's like, yes, you are right. We can be in more Zoom meetings. We can be in meetings from anywhere. But okay, hey, now the discipline's on you to be that one that sets those barriers up, rather than it owning you all the time and you not having the tools to like effectively be able to manage that.
Well, and it provides flexibility, back to kind of the efficiency. Flexibility is equally as important. I wouldn't say we work less or more or whatever. I think we are just as hard workers now as we always have been, but it allows us to work different. And I think that that's probably where the blessing in the technology is, because it allows Mike to go to a cheer competition in a different state, but if he needs to FaceTime and see an issue, he can help solve that problem in real time in between whenever. And so there's a lot of positives that come out of it. To your point, it puts the burden back on us to all be big boys and girls. Like, you got to manage that thing. And frankly, the ones that this starts with teenagers and kids when they get their first phone. I'm going through it right now. Mike just has lived it. Like, that teaching them how to manage the device is fascinating to me. It's a problem I didn't grow up with. We didn't have, believe it or not, Grant, we didn't have cell phones.
I didn't either.
We're all in that. We're in the last generation that didn't have
Grant
them,
definitely had a pager with like the clear case and the
Grant
bright
still
lights.
has a pager.
Yes, but so I think that's a problem when you think of generational stuff. Like our 60-year-old general superintendents, like, they didn't have phones to contend with, or Procore or iPads or any of this stuff.
Fax machines, man.
Fax
That's
machines.
what they were doing.
Absolutely.
So I want to correct two things. One, I'm not 60 yet.
I didn't say you were.
And two, I'm not the cheerleader.
Yeah, okay.
I go to cheer events, but it's for my daughter. I know
Okay.
it's confusing maybe, but I'm not the cheerleader.
Thanks for the clarification.
Yeah.
Because they can see you.
Yeah.
The something on the efficiency question, you brought up, you don't go home early, you find other things to occupy your time. That's something that I've tried to describe to my coworkers in the tech space now about the to-do list on a job site, and how if you're caught up, there's something wrong.
Yeah.
Can you explain just your thoughts on that and kind of how you feel about that on a job site?
So for me, this is a really easy example. So technology. Okay, so you're building an elevated deck. It used to be you take a set of plans up there, you have the plumber, the electrician, the rod buster, the form setter. You have everybody up there, and everybody's got tape measure, and they're pulling everything, right? And then we got robots, and people can shoot points and check those things. The amount of stress that it took off in time that it took off of checking a deck, 1/10 of the time that it used to take. That's just one prime example of how technology has made people, given the people the ability to take a big lump of stress off of them, and instead of living that stress for a full day checking your deck, they can check it in 2 hours and then move on to layout for the next deck.
Yep.
So that's just one example of how technology has really taken that level of stress and energy off of people's laps.
For sure.
What are those? Almost laying the plane here a little bit, but like when you said like, hey, 1/10, like what are those other 1/10 technologies that have like, hey, I was doing 10 things before that are now like one? Because they don't come around often, and I think what was unique about that job that we were on is maybe 2 or 3 of those 1/10ths came in: paper, aerial, drone capture, inspections. Some like mobile workflows with iPads and barcode. Like those are, I would maybe classify those as like 1/10 technologies that like truly took 10 things down to one. Are there other ones that you like see or that you're like excited about that you've like come across your plate?
So one of the biggest innovations, and it's really kind of in that same realm, that's taken so much off of my plate, is all of the technology that's allowed us to do safety orientations, log people's safety. Like, for instance, we're going to put barcodes on someone's hard hat, right? So you can go up, scan the barcode on our hard hat. If this guy's doing something good, you scan it, you see his history. Like, hey, we've made note that this guy's done 3 great things over the project. This guy is a high achiever. On the flip side, you could see somebody doing a knucklehead move, and you go up and you give him a lesson, you tell him what's going on, and you scan his barcode, and you see that every week he's doing something foolish. So for us, I think it's made our projects way safer. Being able to use technology like that. Also, like the orientation process, it's very important to make sure these guys understand site-specific safety issues, not just general safety, but site-specific. So now you can come in, they can do their video online. They can come in, we give them a little quiz on it. It takes no time at all, where it used to take an hour of our day every day.
Well, it changes the safety. I love that you said that, and I 100% agree with Mike. It changes it from a quantitative, did you do the safety orientation? Do you have the sticker? Did you fill out the paperwork? To a qualitative side, to Mike's point. If you're doing all the paperwork, that's the risk side of the business, right? That's the part we got to do to check the box and say, what we really ultimately care about is the caring side of the business. We want the workers to show up,
culture,
work hard, have a great time on our job site, and go home to their families at night. And that allows Mike, as a job site guy, to be able to say, like, all that's great, and I'm glad you did all of that. Let's talk about the things out here on this job site that can kill you, because we don't want that to happen. And I think that the conversation change, and that's 2 or 3 hours per employee per trade partner that shows up, that they don't have to do all that. I mean, they still do it, but they do it at a different time. Now you're talking about more important stuff, which is a huge win.
Yep. So that, and then for me, the 2 big things that we didn't mention were that, and then modeling. Like being able to remember all the underground piping we ran. We were able to take our iPad and see this stuff underground. Like, that's huge. And inside the buildings, being able to see what's above the ceiling. So if you're going to have to get into a ceiling, you can take your iPad and know what's above. That is a game changer for me. That technology was probably one of the bigger things that's happened in our industry in 50 years.
I would argue that's the most underutilized technology that exists. We can do those things, but we're still living in these silos of that data. We're trying to collaborate it. We're trying to get to it where we can do you can do all the things today, but how many job sites do you really see doing it effectively? Even our best job sites, the most innovative job sites, they can do it. They got the technology, they got the box, they can, it's all there. They got to go use it, and we're still seeing a lack of adoption in that. So one of the questions that Grant had asked was like, what's technology, that hasn't maybe, I think he said it's like look back 10 years, a technology that maybe existed that hasn't come as far, or something to that effect. And I would argue modeling. That's the most frustrating one to me, because there's so much data and that everybody on the team can use, but we're still crossing those legal boundaries where the architects don't want to necessarily share because they don't want to misinterpret something. I can appreciate that. Our team, you've got generational differences. Some of the people don't want to go, take the iPad out there and look above the thing. Other ones solely rely on that, and they say, well, that's what the model had. Well, that's a piece of data. It's part of a tool. It's part of the solution, not the only data and only solution. So kind of interesting.
And a lot of projects that are MEP heavy may or may not have it in the budget to do an actual MEP model, right? So that's another constraint that we have sometimes. But when it's used, it's game changer.
Yeah. I think one of the 1/10s that come up, I remember when the iPad came out, and wow, that makes me sound really old. And also when like the Bluebeam app came out, I was like, this is a 1/10 technology. This is taking 10 things, $10,000, whatever your 1/10 is, to now $1,000 and go out. It's updated, all that stuff. I think that's what's really cool about almost tracking some of these other tools and workflows of like, I am probably putting some coin in a basket to say, like, I think reality capture is becoming a 1/10 tech. Like, for you to be able to see your job in really any place that you want to go see it, from anywhere at any point, time travel, fly over it, x-ray views, the whole nine, like that, I think is just a really unique thing that jobs have never seen before. And it's so simple. And it's like, we were doing it 10 years ago with drones of like, oh, I need to go check on that. Well, how the heck do I get up there? Am I going to go strap on my harness and climb that and pitch and all that stuff? Like, no, just get up there, take a picture, come back down, we'll get it on the big board, and we're good to go. And it's like, it's just interesting how I think reality capture is almost like also becoming that 1/10 technology, that it's like, well, wait a second, like I can see any part of my job at any point in time if obviously those processes are being, maintained and held throughout the whole kind of life cycle. So I don't know. That's what I think is also another one of those 1/10s that's coming up of like,
I would argue, you alluded to it, I would argue a 1/100th technology, if you will. Let's get real bold. I think the iPad was the biggest game changer as a tool. We're not sponsored by Apple, but I think single-handedly that tool changed the entire equation for construction, because it put so much data and access and information right at your fingertips anywhere. Maybe you could argue an iPhone or a smartphone, but I think the bigger screen, the simpler way, the apps that have come along, to me, this is probably arguably the biggest hardware innovation that we've ever had.
We had a big conversation yesterday about
I'm pulling up the stat.
Mobile apps and kind of the way that they've influenced the way we build and the information that we have in our hands. Our little pilot episode of just he and I last week, we talked about the iPad and PlanGrid and those technologies, and even the evolution of the pocket and the back of the vest. It's like that changed the industry. It's a pretty incredible thing.
The term OtterBox. Right.
Yeah, let's give a shout out to OtterBox.
Yeah. Man, we're gonna be
how
sponsored
many times
by
did we
everybody.
drop our iPads off of the 5th level deck and it bounced off and it was fine. We were
worth it, baby. I was looking at some of these stats last night. I came across this article that, definitely clickbaity. 100 construction industry statistics you should know. I just pulled 20 or 30. I was actually going to get your guys' opinion. 90% of firms report using smartphones on a daily basis. Smartphones, call it iPads.
I want to know who the other 10 are.
Yeah.
You're right.
Right? Like, what are you guys doing? 36% of construction professionals cited reasons for technology failed was because of poor fit within the current processes and procedures. Mm-hmm. Don't think that one's too far off, right? And I'm just pulling the ones that stood out to me, right? 56% of firms, construction firms, don't have an R&D budget.
How many?
56%.
I could see that.
I could see a lot of companies relying on the bigger companies to find the technology and then they adapt it.
This one was the shocker. 52%, and these are all from Autodesk, AGC, JB Knowledge, they're all over the place. 52% of 52% of folks consider the needs of field staff as a top consideration for investing in technology, but only 28% actually receive it from their field staff before investing in the technology. Like, how messed up is that?
That's a little wild,
right?
That one isn't as shocking to me as I think.
I mean,
it is
I should say it's not shocking, but it's also like it's shocking. Like it's, I don't know.
I think the reason, I'm a broken record, as our listeners are going to find out. The reason we're focusing on the superintendents and the people in the field this season and a lot of what we're doing in our business now is because of that stat. I think we know, and not taking anything away from the people that the software companies, the innovations, the tech companies are talking to within these organizations. They're very vital and they're absolutely necessary to continue to push the envelope and all of that. But we only really talk to them historically, right? They're the ones that are the loudest. They're the ones that want to talk to us the most. They're the eager beaver Grants, in his first year or whatever. But those are the folks that we typically historically talk to. And so, because of that stat, I think is why we're doing what we're doing now in focusing on field teams and making sure that, hey, not only do we have a vested interest in making sure we're building a technology that you want to adopt that makes your job more efficient and you see those things every day, but we want to get it out to more companies. We want to see more of those companies. That 56 stat is, we want to help break that and make that an 80, 90% stat.
Yeah. Did any of those surprise y'all?
I don't know.
I mean, stats are stats, right? You can swing them any way you want. I think they do in some way snapshot and communicate what maybe you're assuming or interpreting. But
here's the problem that I see with technology right now on a job site level. The barrier to entry to create technology is lower than it's ever been. You can outsource it. You can do it yourself. I mean, my kids are learning coding in middle school and elementary school. Like, just so that you're seeing a saturation in the market of just thousands and millions of apps or programs or solutions, and not all of them are created equal. And so the challenge is, how do you trust and find a solution that is good for the team, that the team can go execute, that is not just another thing to try. And the problem is now the jobs are going, I think construction moves faster today than it ever has. Probably us getting old, right? That's an old person saying. But I think whenever you give the team a tool and you want to go use it, like, they're moving, like, they'll buy in. You can get a leader to buy in and push it through the team. But if it breaks because it really hasn't been that vetted out, that you just lose all that momentum and time. Now you got all this data and stuff in a place you can't even go access it. So I think, to me, that's one of the biggest frustrations I see. I probably have 10 emails in the last 24 hours from somebody offering some solution, 3D estimating, plug-in solutions, taking our logistics plans and making them 3D, which we do in-house. But just all these people just nailing us with advertisements, and you're like, man, just because you're there doesn't mean you're good. So figuring out what does the team really need, and let's go focus on those specific things quickly.
We haven't said it yet in this episode, but that's a feed the field comment.
Adam wants a feed the field button.
Bricks and sticks, Grant. Bricks and sticks, Grant.
Feed the field.
Yeah, I mean, our leader of our company, our CEO Scott Moss, says we're an operations focused company. Like, we exist to build buildings and have great projects. And so if what we're doing is counterintuitive to that, like, we don't want to have silos. And I think historically we do a pretty good job. We're probably not perfect, but we do a pretty good job at focusing on, like, the boots on the ground building the buildings. Not that superintendents need a bigger ego, but I think
I don't have an ego.
You don't have an ego at all. But I think that it's kind of refreshing in the way of, actually, at the end of the day, like, I get to tell my kids I got to be part of a project, but I didn't really build it. Let's be honest.
You're gonna drive by for the rest of your life and tell your kids you were part of that project.
So to comment and add to that, also timing. So timing of the technology. It's like something big could happen tomorrow when I'm in the middle of a project, when that technology would have really helped me a month ago.
Yeah.
But now I'd have to stop my process, pivot, and relearn it. That timing plays a big part of that.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just have to suck it up in order for something big to happen.
I mean, going back to our very first question about ingredients, I don't think we talked about timing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a huge one that I think that's why that job was able to see so many of those tools, because it was the right timing, not only in the tech and hardware and software space, but it was also the right timing on that job.
Yeah.
Like, we didn't use drones till the end of that job
Right.
because that was the time that we thought we needed it the most. Looking in hindsight, it's like, dude, we could have used that for the slabs, for progress, for anything early on in the job, but we just didn't know that timing was important.
I mean, just for an example, we had to rent a man basket for the crane to get up and inspect a bunch of stuff. We could have easily done that with them, but we were 6 months away from a drone, so we didn't even know that was an opportunity at that point. So
yeah,
maybe going back to kind of the 1/10 conversation is, from your guys' perspective, at least at Struction Site and Drone Deploy, I've heard it a handful of times. We had this question to our users, our customers: if you could wave a magic wand, right? You could invent whatever it is you need now. What portion of the building process, what portion of the, whether it be, pre-construction estimating you brought up, or even closeout, punch list, whatever it is, the whole lifespan. Is there any element of the project life cycle that hasn't yet had that technology adoption, or is it still missing the innovation? What is it that you guys would want next?
So I'm going to say something that's maybe it's hopefully coming soon, but we have the ability to model things in 3D. I think a lot of the folks that come out of college for the first 5 or 6 years, the older folks, we see this plan and we build it in our head. So we have a model in our head of what's being built. A lot of the younger folks can't do that.
Yeah.
So I think a huge opportunity is somehow to be able to get these things in 3D so that people can actually see how things are going together, especially like external package, like exterior kind of details. And
do you remember when I went to Michael's and bought pipe cleaners to try to
100%,
model the rebar
100%,
cages?
I do.
I mean,
it was awesome. I loved that though.
But I mean, to your point,
I built a model of these real complicated core wall rebar structures in SketchUp.
Yeah.
Because we had a structural engineer that spec'd bar that wasn't going to fit. We were just going to sieve out all the concrete. All the bigs were the big stuff was going to stay at the top. We're going to have cream at the bottom. It was like, we can't pour concrete in there. So there was this visualization exercise that we went through in 3D.
It's interesting to hear you say it though, of like the way it's going to be the most impactful and successful is if it's going to be done in a teaching mentality. Like, are you going to learn something? You're not just going to see this and okay, cool, I'm moving on. Like, you are actively becoming a better builder, becoming a better scheduler, becoming safer on this job because of a result of this technology. I mean,
so for me, it's the folks on the team having the ability to visualize what's going on. But also, if I could sit in a room with the architect and the owner and my team, and we could have a 3D model of what they built, a lot of times this stuff doesn't work. So that's where sometimes it's difficult for the field to explain to the architect why this detail doesn't work exactly. That's an opportunity for us to have a situation where, you can see where the problem is.
Yeah. Well,
visually.
you just said it a second ago, and you're dead on. The younger generation is very visual. They grew up in Minecraft. They grew up in whatever all their 3D games. Yet they come out to a project site. We give them a 2D schedule that's a bar chart on Gantt, which is the most if you really think about no innovation there. It's probably in English, and 60 or 70% of our workers speak Spanish first. We give them a 2D plan, and we expect them to understand it. You try to ask a question to a young architect who thinks in 3D, but you're not giving it to them in 3D. Yeah. I think what you're saying is dead on. We're missing. That's a huge hot button for me right now. So much missed opportunity on the modeling side.
It's interesting that the root of what you're explaining though is bettering your staff, right? It's not a technology that would make a building process directly influence a building process and make that better or easier or whatever. It's actually empowering the younger generation to be better at understanding what it is we're even doing here, so that they can go and make those better decisions and manage appropriately. And
the building's a result for sure, right? Like,
for sure.
It's going to produce a better detailed drawing, a better model, a better plan, all that stuff. But fellas, we are creeping towards time here. I want to be respectful of one. We're in a conference room in here. If you are just listening, I appreciate you guys making so much time to come in and chat with us. I enjoy these conversations, one, because they're so fun and you relive many fun memories and things like that. But I also get excited. I mean, you guys are in positions that you're helping mentor and raise up the next generation of superintendents and project exec, project managers in your guys' role. That it's just exciting. It's cool that I feel fortunate to have been a small part of your guys' path along the way. And don't share all my fun stories, Mike. Though.
Do we have another 2 minutes or something?
Mike, we got as many time as you want.
Let me grab something real quick.
Okay.
This is good.
When he has to leave the room, he's going to get something good. But yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think it's interesting to hear the feed is. Oh my God, what is this?
Oh man.
So
I think I actually
Mike's
know
got a gift.
Is this something that I gave you?
I don't know. You got to open it.
Oh man, this has never
You can do
happened.
it live. It'll be
This has never happened before. I actually think I know what this is because I think I remember making it for you for your birthday. Is that what it is?
Don't ruin the surprise, man.
No.
The rest of us don't know what you're going to get.
Is this how you open gifts on Christmas morning?
I mean, come on, guys. My little 2-year-old, he doesn't know how to open gifts yet.
Yeah,
The fact that you wrap this with, I do. This is, wow, this is going to be actually really funny. Oh my gosh. All right, so how did you keep this long?
Grant, that's been hanging in my garage since 2012.
In 3 garages, you said.
3 garages, yeah.
Do you remember why I made this? Okay, for the folks that are listening, this is 4 baby pictures of me on a toilet, probably kindergarten, dressed to the nines with my crayon, Santa, and then a marvelous-looking suit here. I don't even remember why I gave this to you. Was it just a funny...
I think it was a white elephant.
Oh,
That's
I think
right.
it was.
White
That's
elephant,
right.
and I had to have it, so I traded something really
that's awesome.
valuable for this, I think.
For this.
I mean, dude, this is gold.
I think this is
Yeah, the
circa
grant-
2012.
The Grant on the toilet is obviously the best.
Dude, it's
Smile,
crazy.
though.
It's crazy how, I mean, yeah, just how now I look at this and I see my son and I'm like, holy cow, that's how.
Well, now
That's
you
how
can
you get
take
old.
It, you can take it and hang it in your house. Honestly, since I've had this, I've been thinking of the day that we would see each
Yeah.
other again and I could
Wow.
regift it.
I mean, this pretty much is the epitome of my closing thought of this is a people business.
Yeah.
This is where
Yeah,
relationships are built, and what
Definitely.
happens on a job site carries on through your entire career and through your generations.
Man,
And I
it's
know
awesome.
this is about technology, but at the end of the
Yeah.
day,
No, it's awesome. One, thank you, Mike. That's
Yeah.
so awesome.
how I why I gave this to you. I think I actually brought it. Like, if it was the white elephant, I didn't even know who was going to get it.
Yeah.
Which I mean, that's even more. You want to talk about vulnerability here? I
Right.
mean, I'm sitting on the toilet, so man,
do
that's
it
Either
awesome.
awesome.
vulnerability
For
or
the
ego, one of the two.
Dude, that is, yeah, ego probably more of like, look at me, I'm very proud.
This is Grant's ability to act without thinking through consequences.
Yes, that's great.
Yeah,
10 years later,
You need that blind ambition
You need
sometimes,
you
you know.
You do.
I think I'm gonna hang it in my son's room though, because
There you go.
we're trying to get him to potty train, and he needs a little inspo here. Man, that's awesome, Mike. Thanks. That's too fun, man. I was looking forward to this for a long time. It's been fun to come back and relive some of these thoughts and conversations too. And yeah, Josh, you're right, man. It's people. We just get a chance to build buildings too along the way. So while I go wallow in my funny stories here, I'm gonna turn us off, and we're gonna move to the next one. Thanks for tuning in here with us. Hope you guys have learned some fun stuff along the way. Mike, Josh, appreciate you guys
Thank you,
tuning in
man.
with us.
Appreciate you,
All
man.
right,
Miss
talk
you,
soon.
man.
See you guys in the next one. Make sure to subscribe to Built Different on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere you listen to podcasts. Let's build this community together.